Sunday is officially out, and if you're even remotely interested in one of the T's 3.x characters, you should just pick him up. He's an absolutely stacked unit that really shouldn't even be allowed. Sunday is a harmonious support that focuses on summon units. However, he gives insane buffs to hypercarry units. So Dan Heng mains, Jing Liu mains, Jing Yuan mains, any DPS that loves crit, they're really gonna be happy. Going over his abilities, his skill gives a 30% damage bonus to one ally. However, if the target has a summon, they gain an additional 50% damage increase, coming out to a whopping 80% damage increase with a summon unit. Plus, whoever he uses his skill on, they will immediately take their action alongside their summon. The damage buff lasts for 2 turns, and Sunday will recover 1 skill point when using it on an ally that is affected by his ultimate buff. His skill alone is already an insane damage buff with the 100% single action advance forward, but he gets even crazier than that. His ultimate regenerates 20% of maxed energy to one ally. However, he has a major trace that enhances this even further. This gives the unit the beatified status. When an ally has this status, Sunday will increase their crit damage by 30% of his own, plus an additional 12%. If you have 200 crit damage, this comes out to a free 72% crit damage buff. It's not as much as Sparkle, but he provides so many more additional buffs that she doesn't. His basic attack is nothing special, but his technique lets the first ally that he targets with the skill deal 50% increased damage that lasts for 2 turns. And yes, that stacks with this skill. So he just stacks damage percent on top of damage percent. And his talent just gives a free 20% crit rate to whoever he uses his skill on. Dude, this is getting absolutely ridiculous. Why is this man so broken? Just throw away your relics at this point and pull a Sunday. Alright, his major traces. Of course, they're gonna be really strong. First off, Rest Day Longings increases the amount of energy provided by his ult with characters that have a lower energy cost ult. His second major trace, Exalted Sweep, regenerates 25 energy for Sunday at the start of battle. This is of course helping him get his ult faster within the first cycle and get that crit damage buff active. Lastly, he has a cleanse whenever he uses his skill. Why? That is absolutely disgusting that we're giving Harmony characters a cleanse that's not on an Eidolon. Might as well just replace your sustain at this point, because you will be doing so much damage that it won't even matter. As for his leveling priorities, do skill, ult, talent. But all 3 are incredibly valuable and you should just get them as high as you can. You can of course ignore his basic attack. I mentioned earlier that Sunday is a great summon support, but seeing as those are pretty limited right now to Topaz, Linkshot, and Jing Yuan, you can also slot Sunday in as a hyper carry support. While he won't provide the 80% damage bonus buff to them, they're still getting an insane amount of crit damage, enough crit rate to make a difference, energy, and a 100% action advance forward while still getting that 30% damage buff. Mind you, this is all at E0 S0. Sunday is freaking awesome. Now, before I go into his relatively simple builds, I want to talk about Sunday's teams and synergies. Sunday is an incredibly flexible unit to anyone that benefits from damage percent, crit, and energy, which is a lot of the DPS units. Now, the Great General is also rerunning. I still can't recommend him as we're about to get a ton of new, stronger summon units that are going to be incredible and probably outperform him. So for people who already have Jing Yuan and you want to buff him, absolutely get Sunday. But for people who put Sunday on a summon DPS, I would actually wait. I myself have been having a lot of fun with DPS Topaz on a very suboptimal build, but Sunday provides so much free stats that I was clearing with no issues. However, many of the version 1 characters are actually really strong, and E2 Deal got even stronger. I'd also like to cope and say that Akron at E2 benefits from Sunday more than she does with Robin, but that's not really entirely true. Without her LightCone that allows her to stack efficiently on her turn, she doesn't get much value out of the advance forward. And of course, she has no use for the energy that Sunday provides. However, if you have E2S1 Akron, this allows Akron to stack so much faster. Akron can gain 3 stacks on her turn, Sunday goes, and then she gains another 3 stacks. It's absolutely amazing, but it's so freaking expensive. Yungli is someone that got a sizable increase with the release of Sunday, as if you pair her up with Huohuo, the 2 of them combined will give you phenomenal uptime on Yunli's ult. And with this, we can talk about what I feel is going to be the new core going into version 3. A core is essentially the baseline for a team, and you usually just have to slot in your DPS, Sunday, Robin, Warhol/Adventurine will just dominate the meta for the entirety of the patch. Yes, this is an expensive team that's all limited 5 stars, but if you can put any hypercarry or summon DPS in there, they'll shred any content with ease. And now I also want to talk about Sunday and Robin together. Seeing as they're siblings, when you pair them together, absolutely nothing will survive, as their damage percent buff stacks, so without a summon, it's a total of 80% damage increase. But if your DPS has a summon, well, that's 140% damage increase together. Yeah, it's insane. And that's not even mentioning all of the other buffs that they provide. But Sunday is such a super flexible unit that can slot into so many different teams. To make it simple, any team with either Sparkle or Bronya, you can just swap them out for him, or even use him and Sparkle together. Now, as of right now, we can't even see his full potential due to us having a limited amount of summon DPSs. However, on the topic of Sparkle and Bronya versus Sunday, the biggest advantage that Sunday has over both of them is the 100% action advance forward that pulls the summon. As we know from Lightning Lord, Numby, and Linkshaw's Bunny, they're a majority of their partner's damage. Thus, by having them go more frequently and by boosting their damage, this makes Sunday inviolable to summon characters, whereas units like Sparkle and Bronya can't pull these summon. Sunday manages SP a bit better than Bronya, but Sparkle does have the overall advantage when we are talking about SP management, since she does give 7 skill points. It's not to say that Sparkle or Bronya don't have their uses. Once again, there are still 2 teams, and there's only one Sunday, for now. But in terms of just these summon teams, he's going to bring the most value for a lot of the DPSs. Bronya and Sparkle are still great for hypercarry units, so don't forget about them. But once version 3 comes out, Sunday's pull value is going to be absolutely insane, so pick him up now, okay? Before the DPSs come. Alright, going over his LightCone options, but the battle isn't over, is going to be a very strong option for him, as it helps regain his ult faster, provides an additional skill point every 2 turns that Sunday ults, and gives another damage percent buff. If you don't have this from the gacha or your Bronya is still using it, Past and Future is a great alternative that is free from the Forgotten Hall shop, as it does provide a damage percent buff to whatever ally you use your skill on. It's free to purchase and to superimpose, and is a really great option that provides an additional buff to your ally, as Sunday will always be using his skill. Another great option is the Battle Pass LightCone, Carve the Moon. It provides a random buff to allies, and it can be a decent option. Really, your best bet for LightCones outside of the signature will be Past and Future if you don't have it, but the battle isn't over. Speaking of a signature LightCone, it is of course really strong. It allows Sunday to gain a ton more energy whenever he uses his skill or his ult, gives another damage percent bonus buff that is higher than Bronya's LightCone, and whenever he uses 2 instances of his skill or his ult, he will recover a skill point. So you can use 2 skills and gain SP, or 1 skill, 1 ult and gain SP. This LightCone makes Sunday SP positive, as you will be using your skill every turn, and by default, whenever you skill an ally that has his ult buff active, he'll generate another skill point. With his LightCone, you'll essentially be refunding skill points with Sunday like no other, and gives him the finishing touches on his already broken kit. While Sunday by default is barely SP negative, this LightCone just fixes that. Is it worth it? It is incredibly strong, but there are other good options. As long as you want to somewhat think about what you're doing in the game, you will be fine without it. If you want to just turn off your brain and not have to worry, pull it. Alright, Sunday's build, it's pretty easy. He wants the new Relived Ordeal set, but you can run 2-piece combinations of speed in the meantime if you haven't finished farming a semi-decent pair of boots like me. But due to his ult, you want crit damage, and a lot of it. While he doesn't provide as much crit damage as Sparkle does, it is still a significant amount. He wants a minimum of 200% crit damage, any higher is fine, and if you have a bit lower, it is not the end of the world, as you're still getting so much damage percent from his skill that it makes Sunday broken by default. Now, I'd say the hardest part about Sunday is his speed. I will try to explain this as easily as possible. You want Sunday's speed to be about 1 or 2 lower than your main DPS. Here's the rotation. Your main DPS goes first, then Sunday goes, and then your main DPS goes again. Giving an example, alright, so here we have my Topaz main DPS. So you see how Topaz is going before Sunday. This is very vital. I just basic with Topaz, Numby goes. It is now Sunday's turn. Sunday is right after my main DPS. So, Topaz, and now Topaz gets to go again along with her summon. This is very vital to speed tuning your Sunday. This is incredibly strong and really emphasizes his role. Now you might be asking, oh, but Bronny can do the same thing? Correct, but Bronny does not affect the summon, which for summon characters will be a majority of their damage. So Sunday speed highly depends on your carry. But you can always give him as much speed as you want if you don't want to worry about being optimal. So for relics, hyper focus on crit damage, speed, and effect res, with either the 4-piece or a 2-piece 2 of speed. Now I mentioned effect res because as we get into Sunday's planar sets, he has some really good options. Most notably Broken Neo, Sprightly, or Lushaka. But due to Sunday getting some effect res just through his minor traces and the 10% boost that Broken Neo provides, he should have no problem reaching the 30% requirement and giving everyone a 10% crit damage buff. Pair this with an energy recharge rope and a defensive sphere and you'll be all set. Alright, your Sunday is hopefully built, or at least good enough. Going over his Eidolons, he doesn't need any of these whatsoever. His E1 allows an ally to ignore 16% of an enemy's defense, which isn't anything too crazy, until you reach the second half, which allows your summon to ignore 40% of an enemy's defense. This is huge, but HSR is not slick. Defense ignore stacks, so we're probably going to see the future summon DPS's half defense ignore as their Eidolons just to make this one more enticing. It's completely not needed, but as a first Eidolon, it is huge if you do decide to stack this. Now, this over a signature LightCone, I personally say his signature LightCone is better as it's more affordable, it gives another damage percent buff, helps regen energy, and makes Sunday SP positive. It's amazing for his value, but I'd say pick up the LightCone instead of his E1. As for his E2, after Sunday uses his ult for the very first time, he'll recover 2 skill points, and the Beatified gets another damage percent buff. This stacks with this skill, and it's just, you really don't need it. But my god, that is a lot of damage percent. Overall, just pick up Sunday. He's going to be invaluable going into the next version alongside with Robin, so pair the siblings up and enjoy blowing through the content. I hope you won your 50-50, and I'll see you in the next one.